Today's lesson is Lost Works from Mozart and Chopin Revealed. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
And I'm Mike.
And if you're a big fan of music, the news we're going to talk about today may be of interest to you. We're talking about some lost works from Mozart and Chopin, and they have been revealed. Everybody's probably hoping that Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart wrote some symphonies or quartets or whatever that people didn't know about. And yes, they seem to have found a manuscript for some music of his. And the same thing regarding Chopin has happened as well. Remember, Chopin is that Polish composer. He mostly wrote piano music, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely right, yeah. So this is very exciting for classical music fans around the world. Of course, these gentlemen have been dead for a very long time, so it's not like we're waiting for a whole new symphony to come from them. But if they find anything historical, anything that can give us more music, new music, unheard music from composers of this sort of stature, that, of course, is very exciting for music fans of all shapes and sizes. So let's find out, what about these lost works from Mozart and Chopin? What they're revealing, where they were found, and exactly what they are.
Lost Works from Mozart and Chopin Revealed. A pair of exciting discoveries recently set the music world abuzz. Researchers came across previously unknown works by two of classical music's most famous names, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and Friedrich Chopin.
大家好。第一部分介绍名词 researcher， 它的意思是研究人员。例如 The researcher carried out the study over several months. 那名研究人员花了好几个月的时间进行该项研究。或者 Researchers conducted a series of tests on the health benefits of quality sleep. 研究人员针对优质睡眠的健康益处进行了多项测验。
Okay, let's talk about the first part of our lesson for today. A pair of exciting discoveries, or two exciting discoveries, recently set the music world abuzz. Okay, so here we're talking about setting the music world abuzz. To set something just means to cause something to happen. So if you set the music world abuzz, that means you've caused a lot of excitement in the world of music. This does happen sometimes when maybe a big band like maybe Taylor Swift or somebody releases a new album. Ooh, that sets the music world abuzz. Everybody's all excited about that. They want to download the album as soon as possible. They want to buy tickets to her next concert as part of the tour to support that album. And in this particular case, we're talking about a couple of discoveries that has made everybody really excited.
Researchers came across previously unknown works by two of classical music's most famous names, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and Friedrich Chopin. Oh, there you go. So that's who we're talking about. And researchers are the people we have to thank for these new discoveries. Researchers are basically people who do research. I guess these would be music historians of some kind. But if your job is to not necessarily do just scientific experiments in a lab, but often researchers might be working more in an archives or in a library, combing through dusty old documents to try to find things that previous writers or historians or researchers haven't discovered before. And of course, by consulting old documents, we can learn a lot about the past. And by learning new things, we can make more sense of the things from the past that may have been mysteries before. And of course, many of these cases, they have all sorts of documents left behind by these people in all sorts of places, and it's really just a matter of going through everything, which can take a long time, before they can be confident that they have found and discovered everything. So clearly, someone overlooked some of these things, but they have just come to light recently. So let's find out exactly what they wrote and what it's all about in the second part of the article.
Mozart's Serenade in C was discovered in Leipzig, Germany, by workers undertaking a review of the Köchel catalog, the official record of Mozart's music. The 12-minute composition, also known as Ganz kleine Nachtmusik, is a series of 7 short pieces written for a string trio. Academics who have studied the work believe it was likely written when Mozart was only 12 or 13 years old. The piece had its modern debut in September 2024, with a public performance in Mozart's birthplace of Salzburg, Austria.
第二部分看到动词 undertake， 表示从事、着手做或是承担。例如 Lisa undertook several projects in the new year. Lisa 在新的一年接手进行很多项专案。或是 Irene undertook extensive research before writing her essay. Irene 在写她论文前着手做了广泛的研究。下一个看到名词 catalog， 它的意思是图书或是商品等的目录。例如 This catalog contains the company's latest products. 这本行录里收录那个公司最新的产品。也可以说 I looked through the clothing catalog to understand the latest fashion trends. 我浏览了服装目录，以了解最新的时尚潮流。后面介绍名词 composition， 表示音乐作品、乐曲，也可以是构成的意思。可以说 In my music class, we are studying several of Mozart's most famous compositions. 在音乐课上，我们正在学习莫扎特几首最著名的作品。又或者说 Flour, sugar, and eggs are included in the composition of most cakes. 大多数蛋糕的成分都包含面粉、糖和鸡蛋。
Okay, in the second part of the article for today, it says Mozart's Serenade in C was discovered in Leipzig, Germany, by workers undertaking a review of the Köchel catalog, which is the official record of Mozart's music. Okay, so they found this piece of music in Leipzig, which is in Germany, and it was discovered by these workers who undertook a review of the catalog. So if you undertake something, that means you accept a challenge, you accept a job, and then you start doing it. We've got workers, probably researchers, and they were looking at this catalog, which is a record or a list of all of Mozart's pieces. And this one was the Serenade in C, so that's the key for this particular piece of music. I think C is like I think that's C.
Okay.
And indeed, it's a serenade, which is a song usually sung by a man who's trying to court a woman. He's standing under her window at night, and he's singing her a song to woo her, to get her interested in him.
All right, very interesting. And this was something the workers were undertaking. When you undertake something, basically, you do something. And it could be rather a large job that you are trying to do. When we talk about a big undertaking, it's kind of like a project, something that must be done, work that must be successfully completed. So these people were doing a review, probably broad and probably quite in-depth review of the Köchel catalog. And as Roger said, a catalog is basically like a collection or even just a list of items in that collection, right? So if you're going to a museum, it would take a lot less time to look through a catalog of what the museum has rather than try to see each individual piece by walking around. The catalog will be basically a very organized, documented list of lots of things. And it's a 12-minute, it says the 12-minute composition, also known as Ganz kleine Nachtmusik, is a series of 7 short pieces written for a string trio. All right, so that's exactly what we're talking about here. If you played all of this music together, it would take about 12 minutes. And a composition is basically a written piece of music by a musician, by a songwriter or a composer or something like that. If it was a writer, we might call it a story or an essay or something. But if we're talking about a musician, someone who writes music, they write songs, they write operas, they write operettas. We can cover all of those different styles of song and music by just talking about compositions, all right? So it's a 12-minute composition, and it's also known as Ganz kleine Nachtmusik, little night music, right? I think is the two of those 3 words.
Kleine means small, yeah. Nachtmusik means night music,
right,
etc. I think his main one that everybody's familiar with is Eine kleine
yes.
Nachtmusik.
That's right, a little night music is what that means. And this one is a series of 7 short pieces written for a string trio. So obviously they're all quite short if the whole thing is 12 minutes long, but there's 7 of these short little brief songs or brief pieces pieces of music, and it's written for a string trio, so that would probably be a violin, a viola, and a cello all playing together. Not a full orchestra or anything like that, a very small group, even smaller than a chamber orchestra, smaller even than a quartet, because a trio is just 3 musicians or singers performing together.
And academics who have studied the work believe it was likely written when Mozart was only 12 or 13 years old.
Interesting.
Okay, so of course he started early. He's got lots of music that he wrote when he was quite young. I think he wrote his violin concertos at a very young age. And yes, these are academics. They're scholars. They're experts who know about these sort of things. They've studied the work. They look at it and they kind of compare it to Mozart's style at different times of his life. And they have concluded that it probably was written when he was very young, when he was only 12 or 13 years old. So we could say that he was a child prodigy.
Absolutely. I think First Symphony at 7 or 9 or something like that. Quite amazing. It says the piece had its modern debut in September 2024 with a public performance in Mozart's birthplace of Salzburg, Austria. So it's already been played to the public. You might even be able to find a recording of it, actually, if they've put it onto a disc or something like that. But it had a debut. A debut is a first performance back in September of last year. And of course, this is very nice. The performance took place in Mozart's birthplace, the place or the city or town where he was born, of course, Salzburg, Austria. So there you go. It might be an interesting thing to try to find on the internet, and you can hear some of Mozart's lost music. And we're going to talk about Chopin's lost music in the next part of the article. So let's listen to it now.
In an unrelated incident, a lost waltz by the Polish composer Chopin was found in New York's Morgan Library and Museum. Tests of the handwriting, ink, and paper were used to confirm the work's authenticity. The 1-minute waltz is thought to have been written in the 1830s and bears the classic hallmarks of Chopin's style. The star Chinese pianist Lang Lang, who recorded the waltz at Steinway Hall in Manhattan, has said that it truly feels like a piece by Chopin.
第3部分看到名词 incident， 它的意思是事件或是事故。例如 The train is delayed because of an incident at another station. 这辆火车因为另一个车站发生的事故而误点了。再看一个例子 After witnessing a robbery, Clarissa reported the incident to the police. 在目睹抢劫案后 Clarissa 向警方报案。再来看到名词 authenticity， 表示真实性或是可靠性。例如 The painting is impressive, but we have questions regarding its authenticity. 这幅画令人印象深刻，但我们质疑它的真实性。也可以说 Veronica questioned the authenticity of the jacket she bought at the market. Veronica 质疑她在市场上买的那件夹克的真伪。最后看到名词 hallmark， 表示特征或是特点。可以说 The hallmark of a good manager is to take responsibility for things. 优秀管理者的特征是对事情负责。最后一个例子 One hallmark of a free society is that it tolerates dissent. 自由社会的一个标志是它包容不同意见。
Okay, so we just got done talking about the incident in which Mozart's lost piece of music was found by scholars or academics in Germany, in Leipzig, Germany, when they were working on that catalog. Well, let's talk about the incident involving Chopin. In an unrelated incident, a lost waltz by the Polish composer Chopin was found in New York's Morgan Library and Museum. Okay, so an incident is something that happens. Sometimes it's unexpected. We don't really expect it to happen. Here in Taiwan, we've got a couple of political incidents. I think it was the Meilidao incident, which took place down in Kaohsiung, and of course the 228 incident. And yes, indeed, this is an incident or a situation in which this piece of music was found. It's a lost waltz. A waltz, I think, is a piece of music in 3/4 time, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
And this was written by the Polish composer Chopin. A composer, of course, is somebody who creates music. They write music. and then they have it performed. Although this usually applies to maybe jazz and classical music, not so much rock and roll and pop music. I wouldn't call Bob Dylan a composer. I would call him a songwriter. But if you see the word composer, we're probably talking about someone who writes classical music.
Especially when they do just the music part, you might have a lyricist being the one who writes the actual words to the song. Some people might know, for example, Andrew Lloyd Webber, the composer who did Phantom of the Opera and others. He used to work with the lyricist Tim Rice on things like Jesus Christ Superstar. So yes, Mozart was definitely a composer and also did operas as well. And Chopin was mainly known as a composer. I don't think he did a lot of vocal or work with lyrics. And this was found at New York's Morgan Library and Museum. It's quite an amazing collection they must have there. Tests of the handwriting, ink, and paper were used to confirm the work's authenticity. So just to make sure that this isn't a clever fake or a forgery, they did some very scientific tests on the handwriting. So they compared the handwriting on the paper, on this composition, which is the song, especially as it's written down on paper. They compared that to previously known copies of Chopin's handwriting, just to make sure the handwriting looks the same. They tested the ink, probably for age, because ink will change in its chemical composition over years and as the air in the environment affects it, so they can have a good idea of when this ink was first put on paper. And then they tested the paper as well, because, of course, modern paper would be made in a very different way from paper from 100 or 200 years ago. And this is all to check and confirm the work's authenticity. When we talk about something's authenticity, we're talking about how real it is, how authentic it is, to use the adjective. So the authenticity of old things is very important when you're putting dollar values on them. You don't want to buy something that looks old but was actually made just a short while ago, and they added things to age it to make it look older than it is. The authenticity is basically how real, how true, and how much you can also verify the facts of this object, and how you can also, at the same time, be sure that it's not a fake, it's not a forgery, it isn't something made to look old, but it's actually not old. So it's a waltz, and it's short.
Right, but that's pretty good, especially if it's by Chopin. Lots of people, of course, will want to hear this.
Sure.
The 1-minute waltz is thought to have been written in the 1830s and bears the classic hallmarks of Chopin's style. Okay, here the word hallmark just refers to characteristics, okay, the special qualities that he had when he wrote music. So when you hear this, you probably think, it does sound like Chopin, like a lot of music by Mozart does sound like Mozart. If you've never heard the piece before, but you've heard other pieces by Mozart before, you probably can guess, that sounds like Mozart, or that sounds like Beethoven, or that sounds like Mahler, or whatever. So these are the hallmarks of Chopin's style. So it's probably authentic, it's probably genuine.
The star Chinese pianist Lang Lang, who recorded the waltz at Steinway Hall in Manhattan, has said that it truly feels like a piece by Chopin. So there you go. We can, of course, travel back in time and ask the great man himself if he wrote this piece of music. But when you have experts in his music, and certainly famous classical piano players would be good people to ask, people like the Chinese pianist Lang Lang, they will have a very good feel for Chopin's style. So they will probably be able to say with a certain amount of confidence, yeah, this feels like him. It's got his style, it's got his hallmarks, it's got the way he would play and write. And in this case, of course, Lang Lang, the famous musician, is a pianist. He is a person who plays the piano. And if you can play the piano, you are a pianist. You might not be a very good pianist, but as long as you know what you're doing when you're sitting down at the old 88s, as they call them, those black and white keys, and your fingers know how to make at least a half okay song come out, then you're a pianist. You could also be a professional pianist like Lang Lang. That's your job, so obviously you would be very skilled. And he was chosen as being a famous piano player to record this song, this 1-minute song they recorded at the famous Steinway Hall in Manhattan. And he said that it feels like a piece by Chopin. He's played a lot of Chopin, and to him, it seems real. We might also say it passes the sniff test, right? You can't actually fully investigate it, but from all the appearances of it, it does seem like truly something from Chopin.
That brings us to the end of our lesson for today. It's time now to turn things over to Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。 课文第3部分提到，波兰作曲家肖邦一首遗失的华尔兹在纽约的摩根图书馆与博物馆被发现。那有一句写到说 The 1-minute waltz is thought to have been written in the 1830s. 这首1分钟的华尔兹被认为创作于1830年代。那这边要介绍句型，就是主词be thought to 或是 be believed to 再加原形动词，那它是用被动语态来表示公认或普遍的事实。我们要用这个句型去表达一般认为怎么样，据信怎么样怎么样。像是 The castle is thought to be over 800 years old. 一般认为那座城堡有超过800年的历史。特别注意，当这个句型中的不定词所描述的动作事情时间发生的比主要子句还早，那这时候不定词 to be 就要改成不定词完成式，也就是 to have 加上过去分词 pp， 那就会像是课文当中的用法。创作是发生于更早的动作，所以 thought后面是接 to have been written， 而不是接 to be written。 好，那我们也来造个例句。 The castle is thought to have been built in the 12th century. 一般认为那座城堡建于12世纪。好，那另外我们也可以用这个 people think, people believe 加上 that 子句，或者是用 it is thought 或是 it is believed 再加 that 子句。那这两个句型呢，也可以用来表达一般认为怎么样，据信怎么样。如果我们用这两个句型去表达一般认为那座城堡有超过800年的历史，这时候会写作 people think 或者是 it is thought 再加 that 子句 that the castle is over 800 years old. 可是如果我们要表达一般认为那座城堡建于12世纪，则会写作 People think or it is thought that the castle was built in the 12th century. 注意 that 子句里面我们就用到了过去式动词 was， 我们用 was built 来描述被建造是发生在过去。好，那么课文最后提到中国明星钢琴家郎朗在曼哈顿的史坦威音乐厅录制了这首华尔兹，他表示It truly feels like a piece by Chopin. 这首作品确实感觉像是肖邦的作品。那么 feel 当连缀动词可以表达感到、觉得，或者是表达事物感觉起来怎么样、摸起来怎么样的意思。那有一个常见句型是 feel 加上形容词，像 I feel fantastic， 我感觉好极了。那另外一个常见句型是用 feel like 加名词或者是加子句，我们就造两个例句。The blouse feels like silk. 这件女装衬衫摸起来像丝绸做的。另一个例句是 Sometimes she feels like nobody cares about her. 有时候她觉得好像没有人关心她。那补充一下 feel like 还可以表达想要，那后面可以接名词或动名词。这个用法的主词通常是人，用来表达某人想要某物啊，或是想要做某事，像 I feel like a walk 或是 I feel like taking a walk， 我想散散步。 Do you feel like going to a movie？ 你想看电影吗？好，那以上是今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天单字吧。
Researcher. Evelyn became a researcher after completing her university degree. Undertake. Brett was nervous about undertaking such a challenging assignment. Catalog. This catalog lists all the books available in the library. Composition. At tonight's concert, Gail will perform a composition by Beethoven. Academic. Armando is an academic who studies environmental science. Incident. There was a minor incident during the parade, but no one was hurt. Handwriting. Celeste couldn't read the note because the handwriting was unclear.
Discussion Starter starts now!
It's time now for our discussion starter. The question is, what is your favorite piece by Mozart or Chopin, and why?
Gosh, that's a tough question. Off the top of my head, my favorite piece by Mozart is the 40th Symphony. I like it because it's very exciting.
Okay, yeah. Well, my favorite piece by Mozart, I think, would be the Third Violin Concerto. Maybe you've heard that before.
I've heard it before, but I don't recognize it.
And as far as Chopin is concerned, I think I like one of his nocturnes. I don't know the number of it, but it's the one that goes... That's one of the nocturnes. And of course, there are many other pieces by these two composers. But hey, we're all lucky because there are some new ones to listen to now. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program. And please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I am Mike.
See you next time.